Master
Yeah,
of
he's gonna
supervision
pipe in when
Quality
we say
control.
something wrong.
Supervisor.
from the peanut gallery.
All right, we're live. What? You can jump in too. If you sit there, then Emily could pass the microphone when. All right. You may end up in that chair. All right, ladies. Gervais, welcome to your first podcast ever.
Woohoo!
Thanks.
So, we just wrapped up day two for two of you. Day one for Gervais and myself. Were you trying to ask me something off the mic?
No, I needed to swallow loudly.
It's great. It's great.
We could be like the What Have You podcast and just laugh the whole time.
Okay, I'm
It's all right.
sorry.
I'm just
no,
here.
I
I'm just here to keep you in line. We also have a game of what's the name of Sam's game?
Skittles.
Skittles. If anybody knows what the game of Skittles is, not the candy. That's in the background in case you hear any of that. So wrapped up day two for two of you. Day one of like the full official conference start. Here's the biggest thing I'm looking for. At minimum, I want one takeaway. Could be literally one line from a seminar. Could be, hey, you could tell me all the details about all your day because it was all fantastic. But I'm looking for at least one takeaway. Actually, first, before we even go there, so specifically to you two, this is your second day of content.
Mm-hmm.
How was today different than yesterday?
Today was much different for us. Yesterday we chose to take a practicum. So we were in one session all day from 9 to 4. And we took a practicum about evaluating teachers, evaluating them in the classroom and lesson plan wise. So this was good for us as new teachers, but also good like to start giving us a language and a vocabulary, how to encourage and call up the other teachers in our school and to just being better at what we do.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, you guys didn't talk yesterday. So anything, I mean, Kevin talked about a little bit. He was in something similar.
Teaching literature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So a different setting than the bigger group type of stuff. But yeah, any big things.
Well, they do this. What they were teaching was to institute a teaching lab within your faculty. So the particular school that this gentleman was from does it once a month. So once a month, the teachers gather. One teacher is in charge of presenting a lesson to the class, something that they would teach to their students. The rest of the observers are the class participants, and then they give them feedback. So they have 20 minutes to execute this lesson. And then with this really great rubric to keep them focused and on track of how to give, well, how did he keep saying it? Like to give to give real feedback, not the fluffy feedback, but really just making everybody better. So we get to watch 4 people present and then learn how to give feedback.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from that in giving feedback is the feedback you gave making that is the teacher leaving doing something better
Yeah.
than he or she was doing prior to that. So, we give feedback. I'm like, well, you did this great, and that went really well, and we really liked how you did this. And it's no different than the way we're encouraged. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah. So as brothers and sisters in Christ, we don't just say all the nice, kind, positive things. We give feedback of, ask good questions of how this teacher could leave this room a better teacher.
Yeah, it's not that the practice itself is novel by any means. You're used to doing this living in community with people. However, without the distinct practice itself and carving out that time to do that, that's never going to happen because you're never in front of each other teaching.
Yeah.
Right? You're in front of your own class.
Yeah.
You're in the room, and you're the authority there, and nobody else is observing that.
Yeah.
And it would take an extra practice to say, hey, we need to have eyes on each other, right, to be able to do that.
And also, when you're observing another teacher, your eyes should actually be on the students. How are the students responding to the
Yeah, that was a little
teacher?
bit, I mean, I don't know how long you want us to go on about that, but that was a little bit of mind-blowing. Like, only having taught in a classroom for 1 year and never really spending time in my kids' classroom. I think I just developed an idea that it was all about this lesson or this lecture. But it's not. Like, when he was teaching what a classroom should be like, the students should be doing more work than the teacher in that particular lesson.
Sure.
Like it's the student engagement.
Yeah, I think
For them actually to learn.
he said probably at least 3 times, don't work harder than your students.
In the classroom setting. Like
Yes.
obviously you're preparing
Yeah.
and you're doing a whole
Yeah.
bunch outside, but
Yeah.
in the classroom,
In the-
make
in
your
the
students
lesson.
do the work.
Yeah.
So even watching the pitfalls that I knew I fell into about, they didn't answer it right. Oh, I'm just going to tell them the right answer instead of be like, oh, well, what do you think? What do you think? What they said was right? Of all like drawing them into the lesson that way was so good.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Very
awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so that experience was novel in itself. Describe the differences between, okay, now today is the start of the big old thing. What kinds of things are going on today? T, you were there.
I was there.
What'd you do?
Are we changing the question from what was your
Right.
takeaway?
Right. Yeah. I'm setting that up. Yeah. So just give us a general idea of what happened today.
We started together and worshipped, sang some songs, and had a key speaker that everyone participated in. Then we had a breakout, went to lunch, and then came back and sang again and had another key speaker. And then we had 2 more breakouts and then went home.
Have you guys been to other conference workshop type of things like this? Is that a typical format?
Yeah, I believe that was the chiropractic format when we used to go to a bunch of. There were some breakouts. It was more a breakout within a big session, like get together here. Like you guys get together and now practice it, as opposed to like 5 workshops going on at once, or in our case, 10 workshops going on at once.
Yeah.
But a similar format as in like speakers and
Yeah.
maximize living seminars.
Just comparing, what this thing looks like. Yeah. So so 3 times today, breaking out into these smaller workshops. That times the exact same thing tomorrow, and another one on Saturday. So if there's 10 different topics of study for each of those, that's a lot of material being covered over 3 days.
Yeah, you can sort of self-filter if you want to. There's a plenary track this year. The focus is Anne Selman bringing joy to education. Last year was
Athanasius.
Athanasius. It was on the tip of my tongue. And I can't remember who 2 years ago was, but that kind of gives you the plenary of you can stay in that and learn on that topic all weekend long. Or today I specifically looked at what the offerings for grammar school
Sure.
were.
And can you define grammar school for those who might not know what that means?
Right. So there's the 3 stages of the trivium: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Sometimes in different classical Christian literature, you'll see logic referred to as dialectic. Same thing.
So grammar being
Grammar,
one of those 3.
right. So grammar is the beginning stages. You've gotten past the age of 4 or 5 years old, right? Past that early developmental. And you are starting to just absorb facts about the world around you. You are in a highly repetitive stage, memorizing, learning your basic facts. So that's where phonics comes into play. That's where arithmetic comes into play, and the importance of not necessarily having to understand why 5 + 5 = 10, just memorizing that it does, and it always will.
That's good.
And then, so that is grades or ages 5 to about 11 years old or so. So kindergarten to approximately 6th grade. From that point going forward, you enter into the logic stage, and that is where you take all of these facts that you have absorbed and memorized, tucked away in your heart. I think for us specifically, scripture in those ages is something that is tucked away in your heart, so you have that truth to uphold all things to without even needing to open your Bible at that point. And so you start to think logically about these facts that you know, so you can start to be asked a question or read something and say, oh, I don't know if that's true or that's what's true about this, but here's another way to think about this. So to be able to take all of those facts and start to develop your own individual thoughts on that and uphold all things to truth.
Yep.
And then in that rhetoric stage, you are able to articulate those thoughts. You are able to make an argument and support that argument, be persuasive in that argument through the way that you speak and the way that you write.
Yeah, it's great. So you said you aimed your time towards the grammar stage.
I did.
What did that look like?
What did that look like? Today, I specifically sat in on 2 sessions in learning needs, and I did that primarily because my original training or my original experience with classical Christian school was that it was an education for a certain type of child. And I think my conviction, especially over this last year of actually being feet on the ground in a school and teaching, is all children are made in the image of God and equally deserving of this type of education and this type of discipleship. But also recognizing that is true, and there are certain resources necessary for different types of learners and different types of special needs. So I just felt a conviction to go learn more about that and see what that looks like.
Yeah.
And start to just develop a real picture for how we educate all types of learners at New City.
Do you feel like you got a clear picture of that today?
I think I have a lot of clarity on what would be necessary and what we could implement or what conversations need to be had.
Sure.
Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. Emily, I'll give T more time.
Okay.
What'd you do today?
I also went to something similar to Mary, not one of the same ones, but one at the end of the day about different types of learners, which was very practical and hands on the ground and extremely helpful of just even thinking about kids with more severe learning disabilities, but even just kids that are coming in from different backgrounds, and we have this certain standard of what 5th grade is going to look like, but maybe they just haven't been exposed to some of the things our curriculum would have been exposed to, or they moved at a slower pace of just I guess it gave me freedom and ideas of how to either work to get a kid caught up or just modify it, and the exposure that they're still getting is good and is beautiful. My favorite one I went to today was on literature, which is kind of my bent in all the subjects anyway, and it was really good. She started off talking about engaging them in truth and teaching literature in light of the word, which is literature is going to draw that out. You're going to get a moral imagination. You should be making ties back to scripture and stories. And that was something that I wanted to do all year, but I didn't feel like I had the resources to do it or know how to do it. Or I wanted a curriculum guide to tell me,
Sure.
hey, go to this Bible passage or tie in this character virtue. And I think tips that I got today was that I'm equipped to find that on my
Sure.
own, just from my own Bible reading and paying attention to when as I read through the whole Bible.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And then a lot more fun things, but the main thing was using the really great fun literature books that we're going to do, but to engage the truth of scripture within it.
Yeah.
And if I could just caveat off of that for a moment, I think one of the beautiful things about coming to the Repairing the Ruins conference is just the encouragement that is so necessary at the end of a school year, that what we are doing is a good work, that it's kingdom work, that it's so necessary in this culture. But secondarily, or maybe primarily, what we're doing is not ultimately about the curriculum. And it's about the virtue training and the heart shaping of these children that are going to be the next generation and taking a culture captive. So I think it can be, when you get into the day-to-day of teaching, it can, even though there's so much discipleship during the day, it can be very easy to slip into this, I didn't get done today everything that I needed to get done, or I didn't get done this week what needed to get done, or I'm going to end the year 15 lessons short
Sure.
of where I want it to be.
Yep.
So I think just being reminded today of or over the last 48 hours of
So
the
have
main objective.
yeah. So have in on the flip side of that, have you been able to look back at this year or specific students and say, okay, if our objective here, do we got that adjustment on the camera? That's great. um, if the goal is to train these children up in the way they should go, to train them to love what is good, true, and beautiful, to help them develop virtue, are you able to look and see this happened regardless of those 15 lessons we missed?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
I think if we couldn't see that, it would be difficult to step into
For sure.
year number 2. I mean, I think we saw so much fruit and beauty in this school year. Yeah. That's the motivation to do it again.
Right. So in other words, it's like, so this idea we've been talking about, all the time, but especially over the past couple of days, is the picture of a graduate, right? What is the aim for the student who goes through this education process, completes this? What is the vision? What does that human being look like? And if our picture of that is somebody who scores, what's the top score on the ACTs? 36, right?
Something like that.
If it's a 36 on the ACT, right? If that's all that picture is, right? You can create a human being who hates everything that got them to that point, right? And likely, if that's your only objective, you will, right? But if the goal is shaping lovers of the good, true, and beautiful, then yes, we want them to be prepared and equipped and capable of doing things. But yeah, that changes now what's most important on a day where, okay, shoot, we didn't get all the way through this because maybe we're dealing with something more important.
Yeah.
I mean, there are virtues of diligence
Sure.
and hard work
Right.
and doing
Yeah.
things we don't enjoy.
Absolutely.
So there are those pieces in the virtue training and the discipleship of these children. I mean, as followers of Christ, we are called to lay down our preferences and lay down our lives day in and day out for the good and the sake of others and for the glory of God. So when we say that, it's like we want them to love learning, we want them to love the Lord, but we also want them to be hard workers. We want them to be great writers.
not
We
but,
want them to
and.
love great stories. We want them to be able to articulate well, to speak well, to not shy away from the dragons that they are being called to slay. So I think it's just that when you say those things, there is an importance to, just because you don't necessarily like it right now, or that's not the lesson you feel like doing right now. That is part of what is good, true, and beautiful about being in this setting is, that we get that that's not your preference, and we would be sinning against you if we let you sit in that.
Yeah, right. It's if you do this the character formation well, you're going to turn out some hard workers. Right. Yeah, that's good. All right, T, you're up. What you got from today?
Well, I have a slightly different into this slightly different angle of just being a parent
Sure.
and wanting to understand the vision behind the school that my
Yeah.
kids are
Yeah.
attending and partaking in and that I'm supporting. So my classes or breakouts that I chose weren't based off of a specific area, but rather something that I could take and as either understanding of the foundation of the beliefs of the school or something that I could actually bring into the home for
Sure.
more flourishment, and to partner with the school, because if I understand the vision and the lens that they're operating out of, then I can apply that at home, and then the standard can be more consistent
Yeah.
throughout all of their experience and day.
Yeah, that's great. So did you feel like you have a better picture of the thing as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard a lot of bits and pieces, but it is different just to sit and hear for yourself. So I don't think I heard anything new in terms of the vision, but I can at least say that I've come and I've heard and I agree, and it's not just from other people's
Sure.
mouths, but I've experienced it. And then, yeah, I obviously took away things that I do want to implement in the home and things that challenged my thought of either education or just interaction with children.
Anything specific?
Specifically, I think one of the things I heard was that we must do and teach to value things in proportion to their actual value,
Okay.
which I just think goes against culture right now. But then, then to piggyback off of that, hearing from somewhere else, like we then have to teach children how to marvel at things, to be in awe of creation and scripture. And if we just read it to them or show it to them or point it out, we're doing them a bit of a disservice because we're not stirring their affections in that way. We're not showing them how to be like, oh my gosh, look at that bird, look at its colors, look at, the way it flies or the way the Lord provides for it, right? So just even in daily interactions, going on family walks and having the lens of like, what can I marvel at, to teach them to marvel at it.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So in other words, it's okay to like the Chiefs, but if you are a face painting, flag waving,
Every
die hard
Sunday
every
attending.
Sunday, right? And your Bible reading is monotone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's no raised hands at church.
Something's off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Mhm.
true.
Yeah, it's not, and again, it's not that football's inherently bad, right?
Right.
Maybe the fact that they play on Sundays is inherently bad, but there's not something wrong with enjoying and
Mhm.
marveling at this thing that can be good, but proportionately, if our affections are stirred more by a touchdown than a beautiful act of God,
Mm-hmm.
we need our expressiveness tuned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. That's really good. Anything else, ladies, or you ready to be done with those microphones? Carly? Heck yes. Let's go. Carly paid attention and fed a baby and kept her alive all day.
Missed one of the sessions, though, like at the end of the day. She
Oh,
needed cared for.
That's all right.
But I was looking over my notes, and one of the key themes that I noticed that I was tuning into from the Spirit today was that we just can't teach our kids to keep listening to their emotions.
Sure.
And so one of the speakers was talking about the therapeutic age and the therapeutic ways of our families operating, just keeping our kids wanting to stay comfortable, not giving them hard things. Trevay was, or you guys were just discussing that too. And so applying that in the school, there's some really cool ideas that could be implemented, like giving each house different cleaning areas of the school that they take ownership in. And then you lose a janitorial, need, but you give the students ownership of something at the school. And then also pointing them to their value from God first, giving them jobs, and then equipping them, to be adults in the end is the goal. So from a parental perspective, that was just helpful for me, and I know the school's doing that. So it's just this big partnership between the school and the parents and also the church.
Mm-hmm.
And how in historical times, you'd have families wanting perspective or help from when something would arise in the home, and usually they would go to other parents in the community, then the church, and also the teachers. And now, instead of going to the teachers, the parents are accusing teachers now of why their child feels a certain way, instead of understanding how the teacher could actually, bring in a different perspective. So not making the child the center of the parent's universe, and just how the classical model doesn't want to do that. Classical Christian wants to help the parents go back to that structure of, no, we want to learn from each other and disciple each other through this instead of going to the therapist to say this is all about your child. So learning how maybe New City can help our parents continue to grow in that and to see that of, hey, no, we're not gonna enable our students and our children to stay stuck in their feelings. All the way to the point of scary, suicidal, anxious, age in these teenagers' lives, and statistics about how technology is playing into that
Sure.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
what's our technology policy at the school, and just continual conversations like that. So it really gets your mind stirring on so many different levels,
Mhm.
in the home, school, church,
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah, and the reality is that the pervasiveness of a lot of these issues really stem from where you started, the feelings of a very undeveloped human being
Right.
being the chief dictator of decision making,
Yeah.
and like that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's part of our job to instruct them in wisdom, and yeah, one of those things is not being subject to very fleeting emotions.
And I think it starts on the basic kindergarten grammar level of, hey, what does Scripture say, right? You were talking about that. What does Scripture say about who we are, who God is? And then those things continue to be that foundation. So later, they're not just thinking about themselves. They're thinking about, hey, why are we here? We glorify God first, And the hope would be that it fights back against that anxious self-love age.
Yeah, that's really good.
And then one of the main speakers, Kevin
Yes,
Roberts, tying back into that emotions piece, he was talking about St. Augustine defining hope, and hope has two daughters, anger and courage. And so I just thought it was interesting that, like, you do have emotions. Emotions are a good thing,
Yeah.
back to this emotional age, but what to do with that then? You move forward with courage. So you might feel angry that technology is in the way or a danger, but also what's the courage in it? How can we use it rightly
Yeah,
and well?
I don't
and
think the
find-
aim is to teach our students that emotions are bad. It's to teach our students what is that emotion an indicator of,
Yes.
and then how does the Lord discipline us in responding to that emotion.
Yeah.
Right, anger is not necessarily bad.
Yep.
But teaching our children, when you're angry, do not sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have the right kind of
Yeah.
emotion and then
Or
courage to
feeling
move
deeply
forward.
sad about something isn't inherently sinful.
Yeah, he also said that grief is the first speaker that I'm talking about in one of the sessions said that grief is a great burden that God gives his people
Sure.
to experience and turn
Mhm.
to him.
Yep.
And so it was just such a good mix of being like, okay, emotions are great in light of the Lord and Scripture and your value and worth in him and your identity in him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really good. So the two of you now have kind of brought up a unique aspect of this, being that I'm also sitting with 4 mothers of students, and there's a specific relationship between the parents and their child, the parents and the school. Who, what we're doing here, who has authority and all this stuff. Can you maybe just a high level view? What's the aim for the relationships between a family and the school? And especially coming from, we got firsthand experience here.
Okay. Right. The important thing to remember is that the Bible tells us that the education of the child is the responsibility of the mother and the father. New City Classical Academy comes alongside of the parents to educate the child and help in discipleship. And so what happens during the school day is our responsibility, right? The way the lesson plan is executed, the way we step into discipleship, we have made a covenant with the parents to come alongside of them in doing that. But at the end of the day, it is the parents' responsibility to be sure that their child is being trained up in the way that they should go.
Yep.
And so, what was your specific question?
Well, these two had both just mentioned, hey, we're here at this thing that kind of looks like a teachers' conference.
Sure,
And
sure.
They're saying they're
Oh,
maybe more so even here from a parental perspective, right? And trying to get more of a foot in the door from understanding the school and support and even participation, right? And that's just a very unique element, right?
yeah.
Carly mentioning, hey, there's a lot of it is a very common situation to be in where a parent's relationship with the school is blaming a teacher for the way their child is acting,
Right.
and
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that's clearly not what we're aiming at.
Right. Right.
Or the parents giving the child permission to stay home because they
Sure.
feel anxious.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
happening.
Yeah. I mean,
everywhere.
that is the beauty of partnership, right?
Mhm.
Versus I just dropped my kid off here because it's the social norm
Sure.
or something. Like when I drop you off, that's like it's the school's job to educate you when you come home. Like
Yeah.
so I
Well-
think that the beauty of partnering in this is we're on the same team. We are both for that child and for the good and flourishing of that child.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there is, and also just believer to believer, the way we're handling that conflict is just so different than the way the world would handle it. And
Right.
so,
And I would even speak not just to conflict, but like when there is something going on, if my child is anxious about something, or there has been a death in the family, or even a pet would pass away, I have the comfortability and the trust with that teacher to say before the school day, or the whoever, the headmaster, hey, this happened.
Yeah.
Let's keep an eye on our child together in
Right.
a way of,
Yeah.
and that just helps equip the teacher to know what's going on in the family, in the home, and then vice versa. If something happens at school, I would want that teacher to step aside with me and explain, and then we both are able to disciple this child for whatever the need might be.
right.
Whether there was sin, addressed at school, or if we need to address it at home. There's those conversations happening daily, probably.
Yeah.
It's good.
I think because you said it, the interaction with the conference of it being more like just for teachers, I think even like dismantling the lie that you have to be an intellect to enjoy or understand the conference.
Mhm.
I am not that. I'm not a inherently deep thinker that likes big words and wants to dig into definitions.
Oh,
like
I totally disagree.
No,
But
mo-
that's a topic for a.
I have to be like very
You're lucky Emily
into
doesn't have a mic right now.
It's like I'm either like moved by something specific, but in general, some people just have like this broad love of knowledge, and sometimes you feel like you have to have that to attend something like this. And so, all I'm trying to say is, sometimes just going stirs your affections, and then Christ does a work.
That's good.
And so, whether you're a parent or a prospective parent, or you just want to support and walk alongside of Christian organizations and Christian vision within your city, going to something like this allows you to partner, allows you to cast a vision, allows you to pray for and even share wisdom to get other people on board. And so it's way more than just equipping administrators and teachers and even parents, but rather like this is a full community, a full ecosystem that we can like establish, and it's not above anybody.
It's great, T.
One question: Could anyone define like why the themes are Saint Anselm this year and another saint last year, and sort of give the full picture of what classical Christian is trying to do here, where we look in the past at the saints and ultimately Christ
Mhm.
is preached in this, but why we're looking to the past and great authors, great saints, great books, some of that, because
Yeah.
it's it's incorporated, and
Yep.
so it helps me realize like, oh, I've never read this book or that book, or I don't know who Saint Anselm is. I need to go get an understanding of that and appreciation of that, and it kind of just spurs me on to be interested in the history of
Sure.
our faith, of our school reasoning, and all that.
Yep.
I don't know if
You
there's
start there?
any more to speak on that.
Sure, I can say a bit from my perspective. So, last year I did not know that the theme was Athanasius. I didn't pay that close of attention to what was coming out from Repairing the Ruins. So when we got there, I was like, who's this Athanasius guy, right? I didn't even know. This year, paying closer attention to Anselm, I did look back. Why is this the saint that we're theming this after? But these are the founders of education, of classical education as we know it. We look back
Okay.
to them because they were so formative in what education looked like. And then the theme comes out of that for whatever it was that they're, for lack of a better term, they're hill to die on.
Yeah.
Going back to the great books is partially because those are the pieces of literature that have withstood hundreds of years, that continue to point us back to scriptural truth and give us a literary analysis of what is good, true, and beautiful. What does beautiful literature look like?
Mm-hmm.
And so you stick to these great books that have been around through the ages and continue to point us back to the good, true, and the beautiful. That's not to say that current modern literature isn't beautiful, but if we don't look back to the great books, if we don't look back to the founding fathers, if we don't look back to the scriptures, we can't, we don't have a standard to hold it to. So when you have a modern piece of literature, your opinion could be, oh, this is a great book. Let's see.
Define great.
Yeah, define great, but also 500 years from now, is anybody still going to be reading it?
Yep.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, the Divine Comedy, I would argue to say there is not a modern
Version.
poetry that's as beautiful and well written as that. And
Yeah.
to write poetry that's that beautiful, you can't do that without having studied what came before.
Yeah.
So if you
Mhm.
don't study Dante, how are you going to produce literature that's so profound and deep to be studied for the centuries?
Yeah, so to that last piece, I think it's C.S. Lewis that coined this phrase, chronological snobbery. We have this tendency to think that the new and the modern is the best, right? It's what we see right in front of us. It's what we can experience and know, and it's like, oh, this is amazing, right? The reality is we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and have been forever, right? And if we don't see these things clearly, we are just, our footing is actually way more shallow than we realize, right? And so specifically the classical model being a way of educating based on, we say like it cuts with the grain of the child, right? It's made and designed to kind of meet them where they're at. And if we believe that they are created by God in that specific way, we want to educate in line with that, what we observe about, human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. You done, ladies?
Quote from one of my sessions. Let me actually quote it a second, because I thought this was helpful. We need to make kids contributors, not just consumers.
It's good. Right? We know that. We believe that in other areas of our life, right? We know that we're within the church we're dead set against creating consumers. Why would our children be any different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how much do we just want to do it ourselves
Mhm.
or take over, or
Mhm.
So it is a good challenge and reminder for me, at least. Give them
That's great.
jobs to do.
Cool. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks,
I'm sure
Jared.
everybody's
Thanks,
gonna enjoy
Jared.
it. Everybody's gonna love it. They're gonna love it. All right, boys, let's do it. Can we figure out how to stop that thing just from flipping on and off? Oh no, there's going to be this awkward silence in between this turnover because these boys are taking too long. I'm going to have to just keep mumbling nonsense. Did you just say sing? Why don't I sing? Let me answer that question. I don't want to.
I do.
All right. Get a mic, Andy. Get a mic. Look at this. They're not even paying attention. We'll just start you and me.
What?
I said they're not even paying attention. We'll just start you and me until they realize that
It's
we're
fine.
still going over here.
Talk about how great our day was yesterday.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Andy and I had the best day.
Best day.
None better. The best. Watch some baseball.
Mm-hmm. Home
Yeah,
runs.
we are still going. I invited you over to the table.
3 home runs for my birthday. Thanks, Atlanta Braves.
I'm so loud in my ears. Why am I not so loud in your ears? Sweet. So we already kind of reviewed, like, okay, this is kind of what happened during the day. What sessions? What did you listen in on?
I went to.
You don't necessarily have to go through all of them, but
I don't know. I just need to remember. It was Joe Rigney Day for me.
you did multiples.
I did multiples.
Mm.
2 of his. So he's pastor. Well, let's see. Was he ever a pastor? Teacher?
Ooh.
Professor?
Long time Bethlehem Bible College. Is that the official name?
I think so. Yeah.
Professor for sure. I guess I couldn't tell you if he was ever a preacher.
Yeah, so anyway, I did 2 of his sessions. So he was, I think one he does every year, seems to every year, is called the Paideia of God. So the word Paideia is Greek, and it is like an enculturation, another modern word we would maybe use is like worldview, but deeper than that. Fully immersive outlook on raising up, in this instance, as a father, my children, but from a teacher's perspective, and in the classical model of schooling, we want to partner with parents, so it's flowing in the same stream to raise children, what we would call in the Paideia of the Lord, kind of pulling that from Deuteronomy 6 in the Old Testament, and then also Hebrews 12 in the New Testament. So we spent some time going through that. Kind of like we referenced, drinking from a fire hose. He's a quick speaker. A lot of good stuff to process through with what he said. So that was, really good. Referenced some C.S. Lewis. He's a big Lewis fan. Pulled in Psalm 111. So one of his main points was passing things on to future generations. Something that kind of struck me was I went through private Christian schools, K through college, and seeing now, like, there were people 100 years ago. So the grade school I went to is 110 years old. And so
It's bananas.
at that time, they started it for a reason.
Right.
And at that time, the public schools were still a one-room schoolroom setup. So this is even before, like, progressive education even started to take root. But there was a desire for, in my case, Dutch immigrants to carry on their legacy, their paideia that they've had for their families. And so he referenced in the second, third generations, you can kind of fade away from that and fall away and not really be dialed into where your forefathers went and why they did what they did. So that was kind of interesting thought for me to think about. Okay, I went through this, and it's similar, but not quite as in-depth. I think maybe just because of a drift a little bit away from that. Still Christian, but not maybe as all the way down Christian as it could be. We talked about worldview a lot growing up, but viewing it as working through all things. And now as being a parent, raising my children, seeing how the school partners with us as parents to continue to teach that has just been a really helpful learning experience for myself too.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, hit on that.
You pulling all that from your Paideia one, or
That was all the Paideia one, yeah.
how about this second one that we were both at?
So that was when he was focusing on the theme dude, Anselm, the teacher. So kind of went through his process of how he taught and 3 kind of ways that he thought through things as he taught. So he was, let's see, let's see, how if I get this right. Basically, Anselm was known as a talker. Like, he was just always speaking, whether out loud to his students or even internal monologue. He had that constantly going. So I'm not going to get this order quite right, but he had 3 points of how he taught. One was discussing amongst and with his students, processing, reasoning, like Socratic method of asking questions, answers, working out towards the right thing. So doing things with friends and with a common people to work things out with. He was doing also internal arguing with himself, so processing things that he's trying to work out, and then just back and forth dialogue internally. What was the third one?
Oh, he had so many like subsequent lists happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
7 points, and this was in the first point, and he was talking about 3.
yeah. No, the gist of it was just that.
Don't use the Lord's name in vain.
It wasn't. No, it was not. This was not the 7 commandments.
The gist of it was that the actual development of thought happened through essentially working it out, right?
Mhm.
So that internal dialogue, the external dialogue, and yeah, I forget the order that he went through, but then essentially it kind of worked its way into, okay, more of a well-formulated, finished, completed, published thought,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And another big point that he had in that session was, as a teacher, looking at your students, and me as a parent primarily, seeing when there's the light bulb moment for for students or my kids when I'm explaining something to them, they're not getting it, so I got to think of another way to say it. In other words,
In other words,
this. In other words, this. That's what.
say it different.
Say it differently, and seeing when something finally hits for my kids, and like, oh, I get that now. And then they'll have some. Oh, it's like when this. Like, yeah, it's exactly. So
Yeah.
that was a big point that he was trying to drive home with what Anselm did. Was
Yeah, that was the whole.
working through
That
all
was the whole point, right? That was
Mhm.
talk the pursuit of joy in education,
Mhm.
and so his whole point was that okay, where is
Joy, number 6. Joy in the discovery of God is both the origin and goal of our theological inquiry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So theological inquiry. That's what the idea that I was looking for. So he's saying, okay, the investigation of faith. So he plays out this whole understanding of this chasm between faith and sight, and our faith is our starting point, and the piece in between the faith we have now and knowing in full is what he was calling understanding. And so in this theological inquiry, in this pursuit of understanding, right, always flowing first from faith, from a, how did he say it? I wrote so small. Basically already being in a position of just devotion to God,
Mhm.
right? Then, because we're there, you have a desire to plumb the depths of this thing that is, unsearchable.
Mhm.
And through that process, you get to the, what he kind of called these eureka type of moments, right? Where you see something you didn't see before. And yeah, so he walks through the process of just talking, just talking things out, churning things out. Meditations, internal disputation, prayer, a divine disputation, right? And all these different things that he's doing to just wrestle with thoughts, wrestle with ideas, until he gets to that place where, he called it the joy in discovering, joy in the discovery of God, and essentially that So that is not then the end.
Mm-hmm.
The end is now, okay, how can I put myself where I was at the beginning of this process and figure out how to communicate from that point so that I can get anybody else
Right.
to this type of joy-filled
Yep.
eureka type of moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Put the cookies on the bottom shelf for the 5-year-old to get.
Yeah, that was great.
Kind of cookies.
What kind of cookies would you want them to be?
Simple
Oatmeal
meals.
raisin.
Simple Mills oatmeal raisin. Oh, okay. That's probably a hot take right there.
Mm-hmm.
Oatmeal raisin.
They're delicious.
He's in the minority there.
I never want them, but when I have one,
They're
it's
pretty
like,
good.
they're pretty good. Pretty good. So that was 2 of the sessions. Someone else can talk about Doug's session if we haven't done that one already.
First one.
The first one?
No, ladies did not.
Always good.
Uncle Doug.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to remember what he talked about.
Atonement.
Well,
Theories of
it's-
Atonement was part of it.
It's all in Gerard.
The crackle of envy.
Yeah.
That was a takeaway.
It's all Gerard, yeah.
It's all in
What's
Gerard.
that mean, John?
Well, I think he was making reference to mimesis and mimetic desires, and essentially the tendency for people to blame others, and blame others because you're envious of their position, or maybe God's favor to them, and that mimetic desire leads to bad things. So, and essentially what Gerard is saying in I See Satan Fall Like Lightning, and he's breaking it down in the context of Christ, is that there's a tendency for people to see others and place the entire weight of their circumstances onto that person. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person, it could be anything. But in the terms of Christ, like you see the crowd, and you see the Pharisees placing, they're projecting all their faults onto Christ and blaming him. And they were blaming him for, as Doug said today, for his influence, or for the crowds that he drew, his followers. And so, yeah, they place the blame on to Christ, and that's supposed to relieve them of their envy, and it does none of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Spoken like somebody that's read Gerard.
I have read one book by Gerard, and it was
Wow.
I See Satan Fall Like Lightning. But I'm ignorant on Saint Anselm. Like I had barely heard of him before we came to the conference. So that was a different a different component for me. And the concept of, and Saint Anselm's thoughts on substitutionary atonement, and I would never have, even if I read about St. Anselm today, I would not have drawn out what Doug drew out today between mimesis and St. Anselm. I would not have seen that. So it's a a nuanced take, but entirely correct. Between the two. So great speech, great way to kick off the day. It's always great to see Doug talk and motivate his people and ACCS, and I thought he was on point today. It was an attention getter of a speech, and he delivered. So great way to kick off day 2.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't hit on the fourth perspective on the substitutionary atonement that we read about a month ago from one of the churches in the Quad Cities.
Oh my gosh.
They posted basically the classical Christian understanding, the Orthodox Christian understanding of substitutionary atonement is wrong, because it emphasizes our need for the substitutionary atonement, meaning you would have to say that we're sinful, and to say that we're
Can't say
sinful is
that.
judgmental.
Right.
Yikes.
So it actually is not true, because you shouldn't be judgmental as a Christian. So
Mm.
to profess the Orthodox understanding of substitutionary atonement would be anti-Christian, according to that perspective.
And that's what you believe? That's what you're saying?
Nah.
You want representation here?
We'll just say that's the cousins of the American Anglicans. They're known by another name, but leave it at that.
Yeah.
No, so his opening thing there was great. I mean, he kind of started with the point that, hey, you are on the front lines of a most necessary, what he called rearmament,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And one of the points I wrote down: men are not inactive when what they truly love is threatened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I liked how he described us as the munitions factory
Yeah.
for the culture war.
Right.
That's he got off of the war comparison pretty quickly.
Right, because it
But-
was really just a setup for
Exactly, yeah.
talking about, hey, if this is true, then guess what? Here is a big problem that you need to basically defend your institution against.
Mm-hmm.
And his first point was defend it against yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah. So he said, budget for your role in whatever conflict you're dealing with.
Yep.
What was your fault? What are you responsible for here?
Mm-hmm.
And then he brings it all back with some hot gospel, right?
Some hot gospel at the end, baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's real good. Cool. Andy kind of already shared stuff that he listened to today. How about you, boys?
Well, I sat through several practical sessions. So ACCS accreditation, which is fascinating for New City, and you know how we move forward. I mean, there was some big news today, in that New City, that the state of Iowa has recognized ACCS as an accrediting agency, which is amazing. When we all started talking, a couple years ago, that wasn't a possibility.
Yep.
And even at that time, we talked about this last night. Really, there wasn't even momentum within ACCS to work with states like Iowa
Sure.
who are exploring ESAs. So, Iowa's now recognized ACCS is now recognized as an accrediting agency in Iowa. So, we're going to start that process now, looking at the accreditation handbook for ACCS. Sat in on that, and then a safety training on schools. So, ensuring that our teachers are armed in accordance with all applicable Iowa law, looking at our emergency action plans and all the bread and butter, if you will. And then I ended the day with Homer. So, I went from ACCS to Homer, and Louis Marcos breaking down the conflict with Troy and Hector and Achilles, and it was fascinating. It was a great way to end the day.
It's great.
Yeah, I went to Dr. George Grant's breakout session it was basically on apologetics, and he used Thomas Chalmers to get to using apologetics in your classroom. So I don't know if you're familiar with George Grant at all. Basically, every talk that he gives is he picks a person and he does like a historical biography of the person, and then that's 90% of his talk, and
The
then
world
he
he lives
uses the
in.
last 10% of applying it to whatever the topic is, and he's phenomenal at it. But you have to
landing the plane.
you really have to use your brain and focus to pay attention to the first part of it. But yeah, and then we just kind of did a discussion on how to use apologetics in classroom. So, taking something that you're teaching in chemistry and being able to show how, this is the way that it is because God created it to be this way. And then just anticipating questions that your students might have because no matter where you're at, you're still in some way impacted by just the cultural milieu that we're in
Yep.
of, not only progressivism, but scientism or evolution, all of that type of stuff. We're impacted in some way by it. So of course kids are going to have questions, especially in the logic stage where they're that's just what they do. That's how they function, is ask questions. So being able to be prepared to take their questions and have a reason for why you believe what you believe, and do it in a way where they then can take it in and understand it, and then prayerfully believe the same thing instead of doubting it. Then I went. What is the next one that I went to? Man.
Well, you skipped the last one.
You did an interview in the hallway.
Yeah. You had one less than everybody else.
I did an interview in the hallway. Oh, I went to
Couldn't
so
find the room.
we are going to have one senior next year, and in the classical Christian education, a lot of schools see what's called a senior thesis as kind of the end of it all, right? This is where you get an opportunity to show what you've learned, how you've been educated. They call it the capstone of the classical Christian education programs, where you pick a topic, a controversial topic, and you research it throughout the whole year, and then you write a paper on it, and you basically come down on a side, and then you make an argument, a persuasive argument, in a speech for whatever side you land on. So this guy did some research on how that's done well, and then just kind of went through how he does his. And so yeah, I want to do that next year for our one senior, and right now I would be the one leading it out. So I need to do a lot more research on it, and so we can do it well. And my plan probably is to work with whoever's going to be teaching rhetoric and do something. So that's a senior thesis, but we'll have somewhat of a sophomore thesis, a junior thesis, and a senior thesis. One of the cool things he did say is the senior thesis process starts in kindergarten. So they should be learning, how to get up in front of people, how to talk in front of people, all that type of stuff.
Right.
All the way through your program. So yeah, that was very interesting. Man, dude, my memory sucks today. I can't remember what I did. So many things.
It's the day 2 brain fog.
It's real. Yeah. Well, I think it was more I was thinking about how we're I've asked now I think 6 people to do interviews, and we only got 2 of them done. So I'm constantly thinking, if I see this person, what am I going to do?
Oh, yeah.
What's my line of questions, and how am I going to ask them, and all that type of stuff. So
Who'd you interview today?
Interviewed George Grant. Quick one, just asked him a few questions. And then a longer one with Dr. Timothy Derlin, who's the vice president of ACCS and a former headmaster of a couple schools. So, yep, those are awesome. Those are cool to ask them those questions and hear their answers. Yeah, I can't remember the other one that I went to.
It would have only been 2.
It would only been 2?
Yeah. You said the one this morning, and then the first half of the afternoon.
Yep.
I was thinking there was 4 for some reason.
No.
Well, Doug's talk.
Doug's talk.
Right. Two
then
plenaries, and then
3 more. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Heritage Foundation guy.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Which he was cool. He was cool to listen to. They have a goal of, so not necessarily him, but I can't remember if it was a partnership or he's just friends with the guy who's in charge of the classic learning test, which is the classical version of what most people know as SAT or the ACT. It's kind of a placement test for getting into you can use it to be getting into college or university. That organization has the goal of getting rid of the Department of Education by 2040. But when I was asked in a Q&A to the Kevin Roberts guy, Keith Roberts, he said that he thinks it'll be done in the next decade. So before that would happen. So that's what his, what is this called? Heritage Foundation?
Yep.
Yeah.
Head of the Heritage Foundation. They just kind of do a lot of that work in Washington, D.C. But he was a former head of school at a Catholic
Classical
school.
Louisiana.
So, yeah, he knew. He was sharp. I liked him.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I've thought about that. I can't remember if I've had conversations with you guys about it, but being Protestants, and especially being Protestants who are Reformed, sometimes you think, well, we can't be in alignment with Catholics, but in reality, now in the culture that we're in, we would be more in alignment with actual legitimate church-going, faithful, conservative Catholics than a lot of evangelicalism today. Just with what we value, and then especially in this area of what we would want for the education of our children and teaching them to love Jesus and honor Jesus for all of life. So.
Yeah, I appreciated his Kevin's take on neutrality. You see that a lot, and seems like that's a push for a lot of conservative organizations, is neutrality in the public square and neutrality in schools and neutrality everywhere. And it's long on hope and short on actual implementation, because oftentimes that neutrality means that people that are Christian, let opposing views, and let everyone else but their own view, take place in the
pushed left.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I like I think that I think he was asked during his presentation, are you a Christian? Are you an American? How do you reconcile those two? And it was kind of dovetailing off the neutrality comment. And he said, I'm a Christian. Like that, I'm if I were to rank these, I'm a Christian and then an American. And I think if you apply that, you take that to its maxim, then when you get into this public square that is supposed to be arguably neutral, the dynamic changes, and you're not ashamed to push back on other people who are in the public square contributing their viewpoints. So really good presentation. I'm not convinced that the Heritage Foundation is I'm not saying I'm in perfect alignment with them, and that's fine.
Sure.
But from what the two presenters they've had this weekend, Kevin and then Lindsay Burke yesterday, I'm impressed with their efforts. Like
Yeah.
I think it's good to have someone like Kevin as a Latin mass loving Christian, leading that organization.
Sure.
So
Yeah, that's cool.
What about you, Jarek?
What about me?
You got a PE tag on, helping any conversations today?
Yes, I put the PE tag on, basically trying to draw out conversations with other people interested in physical fitness.
And how's that been?
Surprisingly interesting. So one of the interviews that Alex and I did with Tim late in the day, it's actually we talked to him last year, and the topic came up because he was a collegiate wrestler, Big Ten collegiate wrestler, and so it came up just in a brief interaction we had. But then we sit there and talked to him for probably 30 minutes or so. And so he had asked what does classical PE look like? What does classical fitness look like? And I said, I'm kind of here asking the same question, man. And basically identifying it as a pretty big need.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we have pretty deep roots and convictions in what we believe to be God's design for the human body, and how do we take care of it well? How do we steward this gift that we have well? And how do we do all of our other jobs? How do we fulfill all of our other responsibilities well? And how does that require of us physically in a way that's like, hey, we gotta be capable, right? We've held those convictions for a long time. And so now, as we're, formalizing education for our kids, it's like, this is going to be a big part of that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, seeing that it is also, it is not a thing that we can, just like we can pick from 10 different math curriculums that see God as the author of mathematics. This isn't the case with physical education. So, in short, we probably got to write the book on it.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's in what did what was he saying about the hope or the anger and
Courage.
anger, yeah, right, anger and courage thing. It's like, yeah, it makes you kind of angry that this is where we're at and this thing doesn't exist, but it's also like, all right, let's get to work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, it's not like it's been I mean, it's a little different because if you actually study the classical way of educating, you know, physical fitness, or what they call gymnastics, was a significant part of the education. But I was going to say it's not much different in the church either. So you have a bunch of people who don't really care about their physical health, their physical body, outside of, you know, not having some full-blown disease. So it's I think it's just an area of discipleship that all Christians could probably use a refresher on.
Sure.
So why not start with children? Yep.
Don't ever give them a boring story. Don't ever give them an opportunity for a weight loss story. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
You boys over there in the peanut gallery. Thanks. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Got nothing.
Okay.
Day 3 coming.
Day 3 coming. Looking forward to anything tomorrow?
Haven't really looked yet.
I'll tell you
John
here,
is.
real quick.
John
I know.
Megan Basham's talking.
Yep.
I think George has one of that's the other
Plenary.
plenary.
Singing some hymns. It's good.
Singing
Some
some
hymns.
hymns.
You read sheet music?
No, my wife was singing some parts today though. Sounded nice.
Okay, I was gonna say, was Sam the only one? But no, Sam and
I look
Sam
at it
Carly.
and I think I can follow it, and then I'm like, no, I just hear the melody. That's the only thing I can hear. And
right. So I
sing
can
that.
generally follow. This is going up and this is going down.
Yeah, but I just follow the melody, and I can't. Doesn't quite.
Yeah.
Hey, our
divide
kids
right
should be, our
now.
students should be able to do that after this year.
Hopefully, that's the goal.
Yeah, so we have George kicking us off tomorrow. A little more of a dive on St. Anselm. Then we have
Gotta get that biography.
yes, I love George. Then Doug Wilson's leading governance in the Garden of Good and Evil.
go.
We're going to have a train wreck, it looks like, for our group because we're going to have lots of people needing to go different places. But maybe we just go where we want at that point. Yeah, and then looks like Megan Basham's leading off at 1:15. So
Does she have a title?
yeah, the title of hers is Infiltration in AstroTurf: How the Left is Attempting to Transform the Church. Sounds pretty boring, but
I thought it was gonna be how often you do post on Twitter.
nah, I mean, zero really. I'm a lurker, so
yeah, John's the worst of all.
yeah. I mean, I consume, but I don't contribute to it. But
Just a
That's
consumer.
me with all social media.
yeah, and for me, it's always I don't want to put anything out there where my employer will look at it. But you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be neutral. I'm just
So are you on Twitter?
Hey, it's what you're doing right now.
yeah, right.
Twitter more or the weather app more?
You can't choose. Maybe
John is also our school meteorologist.
I do love the weather.
Yes.
Yes.
Whenever there's something brewing, we're getting messages.
He's out there. He's 30,
He's out-
30
he's a
miles west. He's like, hey
country
guys,
boy.
I can see it. It's coming.
Right.
Predicts the future for us.
I am the bellwether, the early warning radar for you all.
Nostradamus.
Yep. It did rain back in Iowa today, so I checked.
Thanks.
Didn't rain at my house.
You didn't? Oh, you got a digital rain gauge, or?
My neighbor does.
Oh,
Hey,
even better.
Can't get the farm boy out of me yet.
It's crowdsourced for you then. I like that.
Almost 0.2 of an inch, John.
Okay. Yep. I knew
Almost.
it rained.